we dropped in and we asked for guidance to share a message that serves.
Yeah.
And the message that we received so clearly, so
Yeah.
plainly, perfectly,
Share this part of your story.
share this part of your story. And it's what I'm
Welcome to Exploring the Edges. Let's get into it.
Welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, welcome back.
This week we're talking about week 8 of the artist way,
Yep.
but we're planning on just immediately jumping off into a tangent.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to just honor our commitment to the artist way.
Yeah.
And then we're going to start speaking the truth of what's present for us right now in our field.
Yeah, it seems maybe it will help some people.
So week 8, and Jen and I were just all week, we were like, week 8 was terrible. And then as we started to, I started to go through and make the notes for the podcast about what we talk about. All of it is such relevant medicine.
Yeah, always nuggets. It's because I think we read it and then we spend time on the tasks, and the tasks are not always where the nuggets are for us in the text. And the text is kind of buried. You have to kind of get through some examples like of her own life. Yeah. So I think as you're reading it, they get buried. And then when you're in the tasks, you kind of forget. That's been our experience, my experience anyway.
Yeah, we thought that this week 8 was going to be like really powerful because I think it was called,
recovering a sense of strength.
Yeah, based on recovering strength. And for me, it felt like, and maybe the medicine that we need ourselves right now as at this juncture in our life and our relationship is, she started speaking about how it's important to take losses as potential gains and really honor loss. And she's speaking about this through the lens of the creative process where, if you send out a piece of yours to be published and it's rejected, or if you have a big project that you're working on and it's not as successful as you wanted it to be, and sort of recognizing that every loss, if you can reframe it to look at it, not just as a learning opportunity, but just as a way to sort of refine your craft and sort of take the wisdom from it so that you can move forward in your next creative venture. And I think that this is really important for us right now because Jen and I are, not taking a step back from our relationship, but things are changing. Yeah, I'm leaving Canada. I've been here with Jen for a couple of months.
Yeah, just about 6. So that's the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem. And so I am going to be going back to the States and sort of figuring out what the next piece looks like. But it's interesting because we really struggled with it in the beginning, and wanting to like stamp our feet a bit and like tantrum a bit and like, no, you can't make me. And like, shake our fist at like, governments for existing at all.
Yeah.
And that was not helpful.
Nope.
But I do think
it was a part of the process.
Yeah, it was a part of the process, I do think, because we're sitting now in this really beautiful space where we've, Jen and I's story, we met online. In August of last year.
Yeah, in a women's embodiment group, Rewilding for Women.
Yep. And then we sort of saw, Jen and I are both intuitive, so there was a beautiful opportunity to sort of feel into the visions that were coming in and the guidance that was coming in about us meeting. And so we did take a chance to see if it had any life.
Yeah, and we didn't know if it was going to be one day or 1 week,
It's true.
And it has been 6 months, and it has felt like 6 minutes in some ways.
Yeah.
But also like 60 years in some ways. It's wild thinking about, seeing the northern lights in the fall and how that seems like it was lifetimes ago.
Yeah.
Insane.
And so we're arriving at this juncture where we do have a really clear picture about what life together looks like. And because we've been able to hold so much conscious space for each other, we have this I called it the Saturn List. I called it the Saturn List because there is some, anybody who's familiar with astrology, Saturn is sort of this karmic educator. And it feels kind of similar now to this Artist Way thread of tying back in the, Saturn can be challenging, but Saturn really is a teacher in, if you spend 6 months building a fort, and the whole thing comes down, and if you take this view of well, I just am not meant to be making forts.
Yes.
Yeah, I just shouldn't make any forts, and I suck at making forts, so I'm not going to make any forts. Or if you look at it like, ah, okay, here's where I think the weakness was in the fort.
Yeah, then you can
Maybe,
rebuild it.
yeah, and that is what it is.
Yeah.
This is the whole medicine of Saturn, is finding into those places where we're able to look at what we might at
Mm,
first view as a loss, as really this really beautiful opportunity to rebuild it and rebuild it stronger.
sure.
And so Jed and I have many things on our Saturn list, and they're not all bad.
No, no.
Some of them are good. Like we so enjoy spending time together
Yeah.
that we have fell into this space of maybe some codependency in terms of just choosing each other over,
Like going and sitting and meditating alone.
yeah, much rather play together.
Yeah.
Or, even like sometimes I think I want to do the things that you need to do for you, even when they're
Yeah.
not the things I need to do for
Yeah, and
me,
vice
just because I
versa.
enjoy spending time with you.
Yeah, and also like they're fun for me.
Yeah, they're so fun.
Yeah.
Everything has been.
Yeah.
But there's many things on this Saturn list. And so before we tangent off into some of those things that we wanted to speak into, just sort of tying up some of the things about the artist way, which
Hmm.
is every end is a beginning. I wrote this down with
Yeah.
quotations. And it sort of leads into this space of, so she talks about filling the form,
Yes.
which was a big part of week 8, in that she talks about how, like, if your vision is to write a novel,
Hmm.
like, are you doing 10 pages a day? Because that's filling the form.
Yeah.
If your dream is to write a screenplay, like, are you devoting time every week to, filling it out, putting it in, filling the
Hmm.
form? And I think there's this really beautiful analogy in terms of gardening,
Hmm.
because I think that this beginning part is something that you and I are so good at.
Yeah.
Like holding the dream. Ah, I want to have a garden.
Yeah.
We can see it. What does the
Yeah.
garden look like? And maybe even planting the seeds. Maybe you and I together with our Neptune complexes, maybe we can even plant the seeds,
Yeah.
And I think the filling the form part is about watering every day,
Yeah.
and
Pulling the
pulling the
weeds.
weeds, right, and amending the soil, and something that I hated doing, which is like when your tomatoes are growing and they're getting leggy, you're supposed to cut off some of the
Oh,
babies
yeah.
to make it stronger, and I hated doing that. I just
Yeah.
wanted all the babies to have their own fair chance,
Yeah.
but I was not like culling the things that would make the plant stronger,
Yeah.
which is what I think you and I sometimes struggle with in terms
Yeah.
of like what the sacrifices are for the long-term plan.
Yeah.
The same way, that she talks about filling the form, like not just imagining the garden and not just planting the seeds, but also doing like all of the things, because gardens are so fun in the beginning when you're
Yeah.
like dreaming them up
Yeah, and
and
they're so fun at the
imagining.
end when you're
So
just like
fun at the
eating and
end.
eating and eating.
Doing all of the things, but
Or
then
looking at the flowers or whatever,
right, but then there's all of those things in
Mm.
between in the middle of July when you're like watering 3 times a day, and you
Yeah.
can see nothing, right? There's no results.
Yeah.
It's not like you're like looking at your big beautiful
Yeah,
harvest.
sure.
And so I think that this also is really good medicine for us
Yeah.
at this crossroads that we're facing in
Yeah.
terms of building the dream.
Yeah.
The last thing that I wanted to talk about for the artist way is she has this part in the middle about having the grace to be a beginner.
Hmm.
And she frames it in the way like as age or the amount of time something takes as being like sometimes a block for creatives.
Yeah.
So like her example, she says like, do you know how old I would be by the time that I learned how to play piano? Like,
Yeah.
this concept
Yeah.
of
What's
like
the point of learning how to play piano? Even if I play for a year, I might not be that good.
y-
And then I'll be like 80. What's the point?
yeah.
Yeah.
Or just the antidote of that is that you would be the same age if you did not learn how to play the piano.
Yeah.
And so,
But you'd be able to play the piano a bit.
yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's just addressing these blocks we have around how long something takes and really giving ourselves grace to be beginners.
Hmm.
Because I think that this is the challenge a lot of times as we start to unpack the life that we're living in and we start to maybe be able to see the life that we want to live in, and now is a great time to be feeling into these energies
Mm-hmm.
because it's eclipse season. And
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes when we hold that dream, like, oh, I'd love to be a ballerina, right? I'd love to
Yeah.
do some kind of like formal dance, like, oh, do you know how long it would take me to get into shape to be,
Yeah.
like, and I think that it's the same. The time is gonna pass anyway.
Yeah. So at least you're working towards something. And I think at one point in this chapter, something that she mentioned was um how like two people can have the same goal,
Mm,
but for very different reasons. And the reasons are important and I think keep you moving towards the goal. Like two people could be want to be an actress and one wants to become rich and famous and one wants to just like explore and create on stage or whatever. And they have the same end goal is to be like an actress, but they
hmm.
have different reasons for wanting to do it.
Yeah. And even those reasons for wanting to do it are where the juice
Yeah,
is.
exactly. And that's, I think, what keeps you watering your plants 3 times a day, maybe, when you don't know if they've all burnt to death or
Yeah.
if they're just gonna sprout out tomorrow. You'll wake up in the morning and they'll be little sprout babies.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
And it's so hard. It's so hard to trust because we had this beautiful life together here.
Yeah.
And when the guidance comes in, like it's time to leave, you know?
Yeah.
And even when we started to fight it, like, well, maybe I could just stay, maybe I'll apply for an extension.
Yeah.
And we sort of went down all of these roads about, keeping ourselves together.
Yeah.
And then the guidance that comes in, you really drop into your deep wisdom, your guidance,
Hmm.
your guiding light. And the guiding light says it's time to go.
Yeah, there's stuff to do.
Yeah, regroup, reassess,
Yeah.
and you don't want to.
No, of course not. I just want
Yeah.
to curl up on the couch with like
Yeah.
a decaf and a cookie
A
and play some
cookie.
Mario
Yeah, it's so
and go
fun.
for a walk in the sunshine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep
Watch the
making
river
music,
melt. Yeah, make some music.
make art.
Hmm. Yeah, but then I have to take my own medicine, which I said in the last episode was when you have to let something go that's like so, so good. It's not easy.
Mm.
And you can't make room for something better if you don't. And we're not like letting go, letting go. It's just a change. The way things look right now aren't
But it is
necessary.
it is a
It's a
letting
letting go,
go.
but like we're not
Mm.
breaking up or anything.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, it's a letting go of the routines that we've made and this like we've just started settling into some different like really nice routines.
Mm.
And yeah, it's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard when it feels so nice and safe and fun and all of the good things.
Yeah, it's hard to water the garden when nothing's growing, huh?
Yeah. Well, many things are growing, but
Yeah, but I mean
yeah.
doing the hard things that are
Yeah,
not the
sure.
fun, easy things, like
Yeah.
picking the tomatoes, for example,
Yeah.
and eating them.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So this is the artist way, which is
Yeah.
surprisingly relevant for
Yeah,
this man.
surprisingly relevant looking back on things. So maybe this is what we need to do is we need to read it and then maybe midweek or maybe even sooner say, okay, like what are the lessons in the artist way that we need to look at? Because
I
it
don't
always
know.
feels like after the fact.
I feel like this process that I've been doing like
Hmm.
5 minutes before the podcast, like picking out the things that feel
Yeah,
really
it's good.
relevant. Yeah,
And
that's been
maybe it's not to consciously work through it. It's just like one of those things, when you go, why haven't I slept in 2 days? And then you check the astrology and realize that it's a full moon.
working. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's only been recently, maybe, I don't know, 8 months that I've been looking at the moons in advance.
Mm.
But usually I just don't sleep and I check and oh, it was a full moon. Like, no wonder I didn't sleep. So this kind of feels like affirming when this is what we were sitting in for the whole week.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it feels all lovely to say, like, yeah, we'll feel good about it. And we're like in a period of acceptance. But yesterday was the first day I didn't cry. So
Yeah.
we're doing okay. It's.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I I do think it's interesting to think about how it's only after we sort of go back and look and say, ah, it was the astrology,
Yeah.
that there's this like deep undercurrent of astrological influences that are happening
Hmm.
in our lives.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things that I really wanted to talk about in this episode is, and sort of tying into what you were talking about earlier,
Yeah.
when, it's hard and it's necessary. I think one of the most beautiful parts of Jen and I's relationship is that we have always held ourselves first.
Mm.
You know, I think sometimes, and when we talk about things like codependency, I think what happens is sometimes you start to hold the relationship ahead of yourself.
Hmm.
And there are, for sure, there's compromises and there's investing into the relationship and building relationship. But I think it always does come back to this, you know, how for my own growth as an individual, my own expanding medicine heart, how does this relationship serve? You
Hmm.
know, because we're calling in relationships to show us the parts of ourselves that we need to see,
Yeah.
to deepen our own medicine, to deepen our own love,
Hmm.
self-love. The
Hmm.
best relationships are the ones that show you how to love yourself
Yeah,
more.
for sure.
And so I think from this space where we've held our own journey first, this is why we're able to have things like a Saturn list. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so part of that Saturn list, and maybe this is the doorway into the thing that we really wanted to talk about in this episode. What's been alive for Jen and I is really looking into the deeper transformation that's occurred for us, our healing, the healing that's
Hmm.
happened in us coming together.
Yeah.
Jen and I are both incredibly sensitive empaths,
Yeah.
and we're both, Earth daughters.
Hmm.
We have a really beautiful sensitivity to Earth, the mother and her beings. And we're also really passionate people and have a lot of love to give.
Yeah.
And so I think when we came together and started to really receive back the love that we had always given, it
Yeah.
created this portal, this transformation portal.
Yeah. And to find in another person, like to find somebody who has a vessel big enough to receive the love where you don't have to hold back because
Mm,
it's like too much, you
mm.
know? And not that it's like overbearing, it's just too much, you know?
Well, and I did have to work through a lot of my own limits in receiving.
Yeah.
I think we all have
Yeah, same,
these,
yeah.
yeah, we all have these deeper places in self where we're, when we are dazzled, I think we do sometimes stop and look to check, like, do I deserve this? Like,
Yeah.
what am I giving back in exchange? This whole concept of,
Yeah, that there needs to be it's not unconditional. Like there
right,
needs to be an exchange.
yeah,
Yeah.
but really peeling back those deeper
Hmm.
layers. And so, following into this topic, like one of the things that we were sitting in this morning, and it's interesting because, before we started filming this podcast, we were like, oh, geez, like, what are we going to talk about? What are we going to talk about this week?
Yeah.
Because we're sort of a bit, disenchanted by the artist way.
Yeah.
And I don't think we'd be able to really follow the truth of the intention of this podcast to really explore
Hmm.
the edges, just based on what was in week 8.
Yeah.
So Jen and I were like, oh, geez, what are we going to talk about? We don't know. And this is the beauty of channeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so what we did was we dropped in and we asked for guidance to share a message that serves.
Yeah.
And the message that we received so clearly, so
Yeah.
plainly, perfectly,
Share this part of your story.
share this part of your story. And it's what I was writing about this morning in the morning pages.
Hmm.
And it's interesting as everything is dissolving, it feels like morning pages is sort of the only thing that's remained.
Yeah, but we did miss our first one in over 60 days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yesterday or
The
the
day
day before.
before. Yeah.
Yeah, so this morning I was writing about, and I think we had had a discussion, and maybe before we dive into this deeper conversation on
Yeah.
sexuality
Yeah.
and on sexuality as it's presented in our relationship with
Mm.
both of us being women.
Mm.
Do you want to just sort of speak into this idea of the masculine and the feminine, or do you want me to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, well, maybe we can just introduce the concept because as somebody who's like, I'm pretty new to it. I probably hadn't heard masculine and feminine outside of like societal
Like gender
ex gender
binary?
binary,
Hmm.
I don't know, in the last year. So maybe it will be helpful if we talk about like that masculine isn't just men or trans men and feminine isn't just presenting in women or trans women.
Hmm.
That everybody has masculine and feminine aspects to themselves. And the masculine is kind of just just to really paint a really simple picture, like the Coles Notes version is kind of like the go, like get up and go to work, and the doing, like getting the tasks done.
Hmm.
And the feminine is a bit more flowy, more intuitive.
The being.
Yeah, the being, the doing versus being. And we all have them inside ourselves. And some people are very balanced. Some people have very masculine energies. Some people have very feminine energies. And I think like what we've been kind of exploring and sitting in is the transition from having more masculine to having more feminine expressions and vice versa, and how to navigate being able to like flow between and not just be like fully in one or the other. And
Yeah.
like that's sort of where we are right now, is this navigation of like it not being more one than the other, being like, okay, well, I have to do X, Y, and Z, and being able to do that, but then to come back and not just like always be in masculine. Okay, I'm gonna write like 900 pages like in the next hour and do all of this stuff, you know?
Yeah, and I think even thank you
Yeah,
for sort of laying that groundwork.
yeah,
I think that for me, we can look at these high level challenges, like do we have enough structure?
yeah,
Is it balanced by having enough restorative time?
yeah.
And and so for me, the thing that I sort of wanted to talk about today is how our sexuality, how our dynamic in terms of intimacy
Hmm.
has flowed
Yeah.
with these changing energies. And so, yeah, hopefully this will be an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be an
Yeah.
interesting conversation. And the thing that I was thinking about this morning and the thing that I shared with Jen is that I think that when I first came to Canada, I feel like you were like very strong in your masculine
Yeah.
energy. And you had sort of opened to some of the deeper feminine stuff, but you
Yeah.
weren't really like hanging out there all the time.
Yeah.
And so Jen has incredible swagger. Jen has a lot of swagger. And it's because you're a cool dude, and also a beautiful woman, but a cool dude.
Yeah.
And so even like the way that Jen walks and the way that she tells stories and how she holds space and even sometimes how you like will open the car door, right? Like
Yeah.
just a swagger, right? And I think that that is masculine.
Yeah.
Yeah, swagger just in terms of a term. Whereas the feminine, I feel like there's this magnetism.
Mm.
And and sure, you can have swagger as a woman and you can be magnetic as a man
Yes.
because these energies are interchangeable.
Yeah.
But at the essence, at the core of these energies, I think I was introduced to this idea maybe a couple of weeks ago that there's like an optimal balance.
Mm.
Whereas you're not holding, no one's ever holding 50-50,
No.
and
Or 100, I don't
or a
think.
hundred
Yeah.
hundred. And the idea that like this optimal flow, because it's not like a healthy balance, it's like the conditions that allow for the most beneficial energetic flow.
Yeah.
And so I think this idea was introduced to me as like a woman or somebody who's identified presenting as a woman in
Hmm.
their feminine energy. They might have like 70% feminine
Yeah.
energy and 30% masculine energy. And so this is what creates the conditions for the most beneficial flow.
Hmm.
And so I think when you look at even our energies in relationship and partnership, and one of the things that I love the most about our relationship is that it's so multi-dimensional,
Yeah.
multifaceted. We are sisters together. We sit in
Yeah.
ceremony. We're friends.
Yeah.
We can really like roll around and play and
Yeah.
have so much fun. And we're also lovers. And
Yeah.
so we have this extra dimension of intimacy that we can look
Hmm.
at. So when we look at the healthy flow of energy in our intimate relationship, I think that there was when I first came to Canada, I was probably sitting at like 90% in my
Yeah.
feminine. I was like real deep in the feminine. I had very little structure, very little focus. I was just in the water.
Yeah.
And I think you were probably like 70% masculine.
Yeah,
I'm not
probably.
sure.
I'm not sure either. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think it did create a lot of, when we first started to be intimate together, I think that's all we did for a couple, I think that's all we did for a couple months, it was so good.
Yeah.
It was so dynamic.
Yeah.
There was so much to explore. There was so much flow.
Yeah.
There was so much flow of energy. And I think through the work that we've done just as individuals,
Hmm.
I've really sort of started to try to like claw back some of that masculine structure to hold me, to let that deeply expressive, powerful feminine force to try to capture it as ink or to try
Yeah.
to capture it in a photograph or to try to capture it. And this is, I think, one of the parts of the masculine,
Yeah.
like capturing it in that structure that allows it to be the focus and the fire that
Hmm.
allows it to come into creation.
Yeah.
And what you've done is really sank into your deep
Feminine.
feminine. And it's healing,
Yeah.
because it's not as if it's not as if it's okay to just not have access to those deeper parts.
Yeah.
Like even if I'm not holding a 30%, there will be times in my life where I'm 100% in the masculine because I'm exposing those deeper parts. I'm
Hmm.
elevating my truth, my masculine truth and identity. I'm elevating the level of consciousness that I can hold. I'm
Hmm.
elevating that energy. And then it will be necessary for me to return to, and it's totally normal for a woman to hold, I think it's normal for a woman to hold 70% of masculine
Sure.
energy and
Yeah.
30% of feminine,
Yeah.
if that's the,
And I think honestly, in this society, the way it is now, it's probably more common
mm,
because you're rewarded for holding this masculine energy, for showing up and being go, 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 go,
right, the
and
feminine is not as
girl
valued.
bossing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the feminine is definitely not as valued as being able to hold the masculine. So you're rewarded constantly, and I think in many ways that's like causing issues
Hmm.
in the world, you
Oh,
know?
for sure. And we can
Yeah.
even explore it in like the micro ways that it's not that it's caused an issue,
Yeah.
but it certainly like disrupted some of the flow.
Yeah.
Because I think what's happened, and it's been an interesting teaching for me as well, is when you are deep in your feminine,
Yeah.
in those intimate spaces, I feel like I'm wanting to respond with an embodied masculine energy,
Yeah.
and it's just as easy as, you know, giving and receiving in some
Hmm.
respects, receiving being very feminine energy,
Yeah.
masculine being very giving energy. And so if we look at even in women, the WLWTs,
Yeah.
lesbian relationships or
Yeah.
queer in
Queer
any,
relationship. Yeah.
yeah, in any way that it's sort of arranged together, I do think in a sexual act, someone is giving and someone is receiving.
Hmm.
I mean, I think that there's been times where we've both been receiving from
Hmm.
like some kind of higher,
Yeah.
some kind of higher static consciousness.
Yeah.
We have had those situations, and potentially we've both been giving in some
Yeah.
situations and not really deepening into that receiving.
Yeah.
But I think so when you're in your deep feminine, you're receiving, and I'm trying to come into this masculine.
Yeah. And it's not a space that either one of us has spent a lot of time in, so I think it's challenging.
Yeah, because I was
Yeah.
gonna say, as much as I'm challenged by holding a really pure masculine, and it is the devotion,
Hmm.
holding this devotion, letting you reach into the places of your being, your deep feminine embodiment, it's
Hmm.
devotion. It feels like for me in that masculine space, I want to conserve my sexual energy, my life force.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. And for you, I think in your deep feminine, maybe you're not used to really just receiving.
Yeah.
And it can be challenging
Yeah.
because I don't think it creates a lot of space for the masculine to just give. If
Yeah.
if a woman in the feminine energy, you're not a woman. Because I think this
Yeah.
is what I was writing about this morning. Like, how does it work? How does it work? What does the optimal flow look like? Because there are going to be times in even hetero
Sure.
relationships where a man is receiving
Yeah.
in his feminine energy.
Hmm.
It's so interesting. Like, I wonder if men do think about like that aspect of
I'm
receiving.
sure some do, but I think this is just something that's not talked about,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it is a it's an interesting space to think into. Like, if a man in a sexual relationship, in an act of intimacy, is just receiving, I think maybe he is in his feminine energy,
Yeah.
and what does that look like, like what does the healthy expression of this flow, this dynamic look like? Because this is something that I think, we're being challenged by, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure that a lot of people, even in healthy relationships, really get to explore the full extent of both pieces of that
Sure.
flow.
Well, yeah, and I don't know, like, how can you explore if you don't even know that it's a thing that exists?
Yeah.
And that's the thing also. So, like, maybe in a hetero relationship, the man's like physically receiving, but
Mm-hmm.
may not be in full feminine energy, and therefore not even receiving in the way that he could
Mm-hmm.
and experiencing what he could experience.
Or
I don't even know.
yeah, but this is it.
Yeah.
Or if he's not really in that state of deep receiving, then he's not creating space for her to step into that
Yeah.
masculine to really give.
Yeah.
And so I do think it's this unexpressed potential,
Yeah.
of like depth of intimacy. And it's been really, I mean, it's been incredible to
Yeah.
sit in these spaces with you
Yeah.
because, and I think maybe there are some, stereotypes in the lesbian community
Yeah.
that typically, like, not typically, like sometimes you see two very feminine women together, and
Yeah.
sometimes you see two very masculine women together.
Yeah.
But I think there is this like perpetual stereotype of like, oh, like who's the man?
Oh, yeah, that's what, and same with, like two men together.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, it's not good.
It's
It's
not
not
good.
good.
Yeah, everybody wants to make everything something familiar,
Yeah,
you
or
know?
yeah, or I mean, I do think that there are pieces of this, like who's the man conversation that are rooted in this balance of energy. I just don't think it matters what gender the body is that's holding
Yeah.
it in that act.
Yeah, and do you have to be in the masculine all the time or the feminine all the time? Because we've had many times where we've had many different experiences that have felt very balanced.
Mm.
Because when I need a space holder, Jack's in a place where she's able to hold space and
Hmm.
vice versa. And it's just worked out that way for us. We've been very lucky. I think there's been very few times when we're both like heavy, deep in something at the same time.
Hmm.
And I think that also relates to like the masculine and the feminine. Like there were times when you were working on your offerings and you were just like go, 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 go all day. And
Yeah.
I was like not really in that mode. I was obviously holding some because I was able to do some things, but I was able to do a little bit more of the nurturing, like make some tea and make some food and
Hmm.
not feel like I had to be like neck deep in typing either myself. So
Hmm.
I feel like we've been very fortunate to find a lot of natural balance without having to create the balance.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that will always be the case. I think we've been very lucky, and sometimes you do have to create that balance. Um, Either that or I guess everybody's just hungry and grumpy because they haven't eaten and they've been writing a book for 3 days. I don't know. Like, yeah. So I think there's balance in that too.
Or they've been lounging in the stream for 3 days,
Yeah.
also not eating
Yeah.
because because
Yeah.
they're breathing Gaia.
Yeah, and they just like the way the water feels running over their skin.
Yeah, deep in the
Oh,
feminine,
so nice.
also like full body
Yeah,
orgasms from no
sure.
contact.
Yeah.
Who wants to come out of that?
Nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to come out of that.
Yeah, except for maybe governments.
Yeah.
Governments are like, enough of this.
Yeah.
Go back to work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we need our tax money.
we need our tax
You're not
money
making enough money
so
to
we
pay the
can
taxes.
protect the borders. Get rid of these people who are overstaying their travel visas.
Oh gosh, we are not.
No, we
Just
are
in
not.
case anybody's out there. We're
Yeah,
doing the right
true.
thing.
Yeah, we are
Yeah.
being responsible.
Yeah. Everything's all legal here, but it's sad. Yeah, we haven't beat Luigi yet. We just
Sad and
realized
legal.
sad and legal. Too many things to do.
Yeah, but I do think it's an interesting juncture that we are sort of like looking to add some perspective and regroup.
Sure,
Like a
yeah.
lot of the advice that has been coming in for Jen and I is to like regroup,
Yeah.
reassess,
Rest,
create
heal.
some
Yeah.
structure. Yeah, let this be a sort of an introspective period.
Hmm.
And it feels like even in our intimate relationship, finding this juncture where we really have reached this, it's always a deepening, the
Mm-hmm.
spiral, you think you're going backwards and you're not. You're really coming back to a place with more
Yeah.
perspective, or you're coming up or coming down, but you think
Yeah.
you're going back,
Yeah.
coming into this place where we really have this. I mean, I certainly did not have this depth of knowledge in my previous relationships, my previous intimate
Yeah.
relationships. And so it's been really interesting to feel into, and also to get to know like my masculine,
Yeah.
and feeling into this space of like, because I think what happened when you sort of went deeply into your feminine and I came into this like masculine energy to hold that,
Mm-hmm.
like I felt into this like really wanting to shift into like non-sexual intimacy,
Mm-hmm.
like create a lot more physical intimacy that was not sexual, or even if it was sexual or physically intimate, that it didn't reach like an orgasm.
Mm.
And I wonder if that's like that part of my internal masculine that wants to like conserve that life force energy.
Yeah.
Because I think if you start to, and I have not studied some of the like tantric practices.
Yeah, but it's in there.
Yeah, I think it is
Yeah, I
kind of
think
like
so.
sprinkled in there. And it's just been interesting to meet that part of myself, um,
Yeah.
through our relationship. It's been interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think we're really lucky because we're very open and
Mm-hmm.
we're able to have conversations and not not that somebody's feelings are never hurt, like it happens, but to not stay stuck in those moments. And
Mm-hmm.
more often than not, it's not based on like hurt feelings, it's based on conversation and figuring it out. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, yeah, I think it's really good. Feel very fortunate.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it does come from this being primarily grounded in our own evolution
Hmm.
as souls,
Yeah.
and feeling the spaces that we've come together and also honoring the spaces that we will come apart.
Hmm.
I think it's kind of tying back into the artist way,
Sure.
seeing
Yeah.
seeing the ends as beginnings,
Yeah.
or even the losses in terms of like we're sort of losing this routine and beautiful life that we've built
Yeah.
and seeing it as a beginning, like
Yeah.
creating the foundations.
Yeah, or as a gift, because maybe if there wasn't a such thing as a travel visa, I was sort of writing this morning
Mm-hmm.
that maybe I would be able to go and tackle a little bit more of the purging,
Mm.
but having this like 6 month time limit on it, it feels like not important, not like really
This
what
is
I want to
why
be
we were in
doing.
vacation mode because
Yeah, a
we
little
only
bit.
had six
Yeah,
months.
we had 6 months and not 60 years, but maybe if we did, I'd be like, okay, well, today it's raining. I'll go and like go through the camping bins and see what we don't need. So maybe it's a time to do that also.
Mm.
And it's just sort of like a little gift, like, here, go, take the time, have
Yeah,
some vacations, go to the beach, you
yeah.
know. Yeah, so I don't know. I still don't know. Still don't know fully why I'm purging. Starting to feel like maybe I'll be in this space a little while longer, but I still feel like I need to purge. So I don't know. We will keep you posted if we ever
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah, and also just being vulnerable around, like letting the nature of our, like sharing this vulnerable part of the evolution
Hmm.
of our own relationship and seeing that mirrored in my mind in terms of the podcast,
Yeah,
because it's gone through just a lot of changes
sure.
already in just a short period.
Yeah,
And
that
that
we were
feels
not
like our
expecting.
relationship,
Yeah.
sure. Like we came together and then, all of these miraculous
Yeah.
healing, transformational, this identity, soothing portals opened just
Yeah.
one after another as we were
Yeah.
moving through this. And I think, and I hope that this is the space that the podcast will hold
Yeah.
and that we can keep bringing these conversations into the mainstream
Yeah.
and just honoring that like next week I will not be here. I'll be somewhere else.
Yeah, and hopefully the internet connection will be stable. And because last week was a real treat to be able to limit some of the editing because there
Mm,
weren't like weird cutouts where everybody was frozen for 2.5 minutes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also our energy will be a bit distinct.
Yeah.
We've been very commingled
It's been nice. We're
energetically.
soup.
Yeah, we're a soup.
We're a soup.
Well, we'll go back to being carrots and celery, I
Yeah,
guess.
I guess. I
Mm,
don't know.
yeah, I don't know either.
Maybe we won't. who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah.
Who knows what's possible?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's it. I think that's the thing that we sort of wanted to talk about, introducing this idea that there are, polarities
Mm-hmm.
energetically,
Yeah.
how they relate to one another,
Yeah.
how they coexist, feeling into how these energies are not limited to hetero or homosexual relationships.
Yeah, or anything in between.
Yeah, and how
Yeah.
it's not even really limited, yeah, right, anything in
Yeah.
between. And how it's not really limited even to sexual
Yeah.
relationships or physical intimacy,
Yeah.
because these are the structures that sort of hold our entire experience. And I think, even if we were, Jen and I have started many theoretical businesses, just
Yeah.
many,
Yeah.
like what that, because it happens even in business, it
Sure.
happens even on a team, like you have a team of people, like who's doing what, who's holding what,
Yeah.
who's bringing what, who's valued for what.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just looking at this interplay of these, the polarity of these energies and where the flow is best in your relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and even having like the level of conversations that we have to address, like, okay, we're seeing a change in the flow,
Yeah.
because I think this happens with everything: the flow of abundance, the flow of
Sure.
sexual chemistry, the flow of money, the flow
Yeah.
of creativity, like all of these things are sort of their own energetic flows. And so it's really important to be able to like sit in them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm glad that we were able to share this small part of it.
Yeah, and hopefully it helped. Let us know. Let us know in the comments if it helped. Maybe we'll swing back to this. I mean, we are trying to keep all of these around the 40-minute mark. So
Yeah.
maybe we'll swing back to it and dive a little deeper another time.
Yeah, and I would also be really interested to know, if you are in a relationship where you feel like you've sort of achieved this optimal level of flow, like what that looks
Mm,
like. I would love it if you could drop in the comments,
yeah.
just because we're, sort of exploring this ourselves. So
Yeah.
any insight I think would be appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. That's our time for this
I
week.
guess so. Went fast.
Wait, week nine.
Oh, week 9.
Week nine for the artist way.
Yep.
She said it may be tempting to abandon ship at this point, which is what we've been trying to do for like 2 weeks. So, but it's
We're
only,
not.
yeah, we didn't yet.
Yeah. Oh God.
We didn't yet. But there is, so 9, 10, 11, there's 4 more weeks of the artist way.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can carry this thing to the end
Yep.
and continue to bring content that's interesting and relevant.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah,
Thanks for being here.
thanks for tuning in this week.
Yeah, I hope it helped.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.